Classic Plus data mining. What patch 1.6 actually tells us. Here for Mr. GM. Now, Classic Plus, whether you're going to play it or not, all right, I'm a retail guy. I don't play Classic, but whether you're going to play it or not, it's going to be massive for the game. And it could even lead to changes in retail down the line, because honestly, I feel like retail is getting a retail plus after the last tie-in. I really feel like we're going to see a reset to the game. We're going to see kind of a return to the basics, almost like a Classic Plus, but with retail fidelity and spells and everything else. So let's see what Mr. GM has to say here about all the data mining. He's gathered it all together and what we currently know about Classic Plus going forward. Here it is.
Hello there, and welcome back to another video. Now, we got the face cam on. I wanted to just do a video kind of talking about Classic WoW and Classic WoW data mining and the patch 1.60, which is obviously the kind of Classic Plus build, which we've seen for a while now. And I wanted to kind of go over the history of that build, what it means, what we know, and all that kind of good stuff. I actually don't think we know that much, but there has been some data mining recently. So we're going to kind of try and bring everything together from what we know from recent data mining. But before we jump into that, this video is sponsored by FlexiSpot, who have sent me their Voltrex electric standing desk. And considering how much time I spend at this
what the hell, Cyclone? That guy is way better looking than Sam.
Warcraft, being
True,
able
Mr.
to actually
GM,
change
he's
the
handsome guy. I
position
like
throughout
Mr.
the
GM.
day
He's a good
is something
guy.
I've wanted for a while. The desk is fully height adjustable from 60 to 125 centimeters, so I can go from normal sitting position to standing in just a few seconds. This version is 140 by 80 centimeters, so there's plenty of room for my monitors, keyboard, mouse, and everything else I normally have scattered around my desk. It's also rated to hold up to 200 kg, so I'm definitely not going to be worrying about the weight of my setup. You can actually save 4 different height presets as well, which means I can have one for sitting, one for standing, and just switch between them instantly.
Very nice.
And there's even a USB port built directly into the controls for charging your phone or other devices. So if you're spending hours a day at your PC like I am, being able to switch between sitting and standing without changing your entire setup is genuinely so useful. And thanks again to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. You can check out their Voltrex desk and other products by checking out the link below. So as I said, this is more of a casual sort of video where we're just going to discuss a little bit about what has been going on with Classic Plus. So let's start by talking about the history of Classic patches and basically get you up to speed with where we're at since 2019. So the Classic era builds run on 1.x, so 1.12, 1.13, 14, etc. Now 1.12 was the last build of Vanilla WoW in 2006, so that's the original build back from then. And then obviously when Classic WoW came out in 2019, 6 years ago, we had patch 1.13, and this progressed through time to 1.13.1, 2, 3, etc. with the new phases and content that they added with that version of the game. Now in 2021, we did get patch 1.14. Now this was more of a back-end update, updating to DirectX 12 and adding ray tracing shadows. Then we had 1.14.1, which was Season of Mastery, and then we had 1.14.4, which did add Classic Hardcore. Then at BlizzCon, they announced Season of Discovery, which was patch.
So they did add shadows to Classic. I didn't know that. That came in a patch. There's been this whole debate online about whether they should update graphics for Classic Plus, like whether or not they should keep the very original Classic graphics or they should update things and just keep the Classic playstyle. I don't know. There's like a big back and forth about that. Where do I sit on it? I think Classic Plus could be a little bit better in fidelity, right? Could be a little bit upgraded. I understand the appeal of the old style of graphics and how people just have so much nostalgia for it. But I think if you're going to actually play a version of Classic that never has an end game, I think you could have a little bit of an upgrade on the graphics. It doesn't have to look like retail. I understand people hate the Disneyfication of the characters and everything, whatever, that's fine. But I think you could have like smoother things, smoother abilities, maybe updated graphics on some of the abilities and spell animations and stuff like that. I think that would be fine, and people would still like it. But my opinion on Classic Plus doesn't matter. We'll see what Blizzard actually does.
1.15, and then that progressed similar to the 2019 version with 1.15.1, 2, etc., ending on 1.15.8 being the last Season of Discovery patch, which added Phase 8 content, and then Season of Discovery development was announced to be ending in May 2025. Now, since then, we have had 1.15.8 and 1.15.9, which were both back-end updates to bring up the client to the the latest retail patch as it's built on top of the retail client. That's how Classic was built in 2019, and they've just progressively updated it to the modern client that they use. Now, these patches did bring in some additional updates. 1.15.9 did bring in edit mode and updated nameplates, and this was released on the 21st of July 2026, so very recently. Now, let's get into patch 1.60. So this appeared firstly in October 2025, on October 24th, 2025. And this was added to the WoW Dev 2 CDN. So the content delivery networks that Blizzard use, there's various ones, and some of them are encrypted and some are unencrypted, which are the more public-facing ones. And these WoW Dev ones are encrypted, so we could not see the data, but we could see the build, and the build was 1.6.
Yeah, J-Mal makes a good point. Chat, multi-tagging, and I would play Classic Plus. No multi-tagging, forget about it. Yeah, that was definitely a thing in Classic, and still is in Classic right now. Is yes, like you tag a mob first, or you don't get the tag. Guess what? You're waiting there for it to respawn. That's definitely an issue that I think that's something that I think that doesn't have to be part of the Classic fantasy. You don't need to worry about somebody tagging something first, or your melee so the ranged always get to it before you do. That kind of shit sucks. I do agree, J-Mal. Hopefully they add multi-tagging to Classic Plus.
So 0.63979, which means nothing, but that's fine. And since then, as of the recording, we've had about 44 builds of this on the WoW Dev 2 CDN. So absolutely tons of builds. For context, the PTR and even expansions don't get that many builds throughout its life cycle. So pretty interesting. They've been very active with development on this branch. Now, going back to what we said about the builds, the 1.60, it's a 1.x build, so it is very likely to be Classic era based, which is vanilla WoW, obviously. Now, what's super interesting about the WoW Dev 2 CDN is that if it was installed, it would create a folder called Classic Alpha, and if it was on the launcher, it would say Classic Internal Alpha. Now, I don't know if that's just left over from 2019 Classic or any other version of Classic, but it is pretty interesting to know that the WoW Dev 2 build is linked to Classic Alpha. Now, on August 6th, 2026, we did get a new patch to the WoW Dev 2 CDN, and this was patch 1.6.1. So this was the first kind of iteration of the 1.6 builds. Now, historically, Blizzard used the 0.1 patches as launch patches. For example, Midnight had 12.0 as a systems patch, and then shortly before launch, they pushed 12.0.1. This method of having a systems patch, then a launch patch, is something they've been doing since the Burning Crusade, with patch 2.0.1 being the systems patch for Burning Crusade, and then 12.0.3 being the launch patch back then. And a couple days before the 1.60.1 launch on WoW Dev 2, they pushed a 1.60 patch to WoW Dev 5. So now there are two...
The funny thing is about this, right, he's following all these patches and everything. The truth is, Blizzard has yet to really confirm that there is even a Classic Plus. So imagine they come out to BlizzCon, they're like, guys, we have a big announcement. All these patches and everything you've been looking at, we brought WoW to mobile. That's what this is. It's WoW Mobile. It's coming to your phone. You guys have phones, don't you? Yes. Oh, okay, let's do it. WoW on mobile. Oh, man. I think that would break the internet. And I'm sure that's not what it is. Blizzard is doing Classic Plus. There's tons of evidence out there. For one, I always told you guys from the very beginning, the day you see Blizzard go hunt down all these private servers and shut them down is the official day that Blizzard's working on Classic Plus. They would riot for sure. I already said that. So remember when everyone was talking about, oh, Turtle WoW shut down and everything? I was like, guys, you know what this means, right? It means Classic Plus is coming. And then you also had the invite of all the streamers, right? Which, of course, I was one of them, to go to Blizzard and all that stuff. Yeah, you guys remember that? And actually check out Classic Plus, which is, I'm sure, what that was about. They came back and seemed pleasantly surprised. So there's definitely a Classic Plus in the works. It's not going to be World of Warcraft on mobile. But it is funny that, like, technically they haven't really announced anything. Technically, we don't know that they're working on Classic Plus. There's no official announcement of it. We're just all assuming that not only are they working on it, we're going to get the announcement in the freaking expansion. Yeah, you did not go. I know. I was not there. This is true.
Active builds of Classic Plus on the internal CDN, and both of them are receiving builds. So what does this mean? It means they're kind of gearing up. We could get an announcement at BlizzCon, and then shortly after, the release could come as little as a month later. We'll have to see with that. So let's move on by talking about Camelot. So Camelot is the internal project name for whatever this Classic Plus project is. Now, Blizzard have used code names for many projects. So like Fenris was Diablo, Prometheus was Overwatch, and Odyssey was the cancelled survival game. So they use it quite often. So I wouldn't think too much into it. It's not going to be some Knights of the Round Table game name or anything like that. It is simply just an internal name that they've been using for the Classic Plus project.
Yes.
Now, on June 16th, Dataminer Steven tweeted saying that new heroic and epic licenses were added for a mysterious World of Warcraft Camelot version, and he later confirmed that Camelot was linked to the mysterious 1.60. Now, in August, he did go into a little bit more detail about these heroic and epic versions and what they could contain. He said that there's 2 transmog sets, one for a Shendorai or Skyborn, and one for an adventurer, which could be a dwarf. He said there's one 3D adventurer cape, there's 2 mounts, a dwarf bear, and a Skyborn cat.
The Shendorai one is very interesting to me because that's another like elven race. And technically, if you're going back to Classic, right, to do like a Classic Plus or something, the whole meme about there being too many elven races, well, that doesn't really hold anymore because technically you only have, in a Classic version of the game, you just have Night Elves. You just got the Night Elves. I don't know if they're going to have Blood Elves necessarily or High Elves in the game. Now it's Classic Plus, so they could totally change up the launch races. I mean, you could even have playable ogres. It doesn't matter. But the fact that they went with this, the Shendorai, which are like a Skyborn elven race, that's an interesting choice. I would expect there to be High Elves instead of these guys. But it looks like they're adding another elven race. So you could start with Night Elves and Shendorai. I would say there's definitely going to be there's going to be factions. There's going to be factions, hardline factions. I don't think they're going to blur the faction line. That would piss Classic players off. So will they be an alliance race or a horde race? I mean, historically, I think they are alliance. So this will be interesting to see. And then you got adventurer dwarves, all these other things, Datamine, interesting stuff, and all the Skyborn stuff. Like they did invest a lot of time into this Shendorai race.
The bear we've actually seen before. It was added to the 12.1 PTR and then later encrypted.
It's a nice looking bear.
This is the Veteran Adventurer's Loyal Companion mount. That'll be very likely some kind of Heroic or Epic Edition mount for retail, maybe not in the actual game itself. He also said there's one toy, which is the Shendorai Windwell, and 2 tabards, one for Lordaeron and one for the Shendorai. And these were actually partially data mined in the Titan Reforged client of all places, the Chinese client. So yeah, you can kind of see half of those and you get the rough idea of what they look like. This
is all BS if they give it to retail players too. Well, for sure. I mean, there's decor items. They're not gonna. I don't think they're gonna have player housing in Classic Plus. That might come later on, actually. Now that I think of it, they could do player housing in Classic Plus. But I would assume that all these items are like for crossover stuff. Like if you play Classic Plus and you level up a character to whatever insert level here, then you get these items in retail, right? We've seen that before with like launch of Classic Wrath of the Lich King or Classic Burning Crusade. If you got to a certain level or you leveled up a Death Knight or something, you got a mount. You guys remember that stuff. I'm sure they're going to do that with Classic Plus too.
Also 5 different Skyborn house decors. These included a banner, a light, a pillow, an archway, and a windwell. And these were originally added in the 1205 PTR and later encrypted as well, similar to the other stuff. So again, we don't really know the ins and outs of the Heroic and Epic editions, but it definitely seems like there is going to be that for this Classic Plus. Now, I'll be remiss to not mention it, the franchise slate leak. So shortly after the Camelot revelation with Steven and everything like that, this image started circulating and most people kind of brushed it off
like
as
100
fake
times now.
it kind of looks a bit fake. And then it became extremely interesting when it turns out the image was actually posted to Reddit in August 2025. And this is way before the initial mentions of Camelot were mentioned by data miners. Now, there is a very slim chance that someone saw this name in the binary for WoW, because the term mainline Camelot was added and later removed at some point, but we're not sure when. So potentially that's where they got it from, or this is actually a real leak. But it is very interesting. It's certainly, obviously it mentions Camelot and Classic Era, but it also mentions some very interesting other projects as well. So another thing that was kind of data mined and very interesting, potentially related to Camelot, not confirmed related to Camelot, is that data miners noticed some interesting new map files which weren't publicly visible.
Yeah, we did a whole video on this. This was a really interesting thing. So what these red squares represent is like things that Blizzard is working on, or like things that they're changing, right? So they almost look like, a heat map, but this is basically where Blizzard is altering things in the Classic world. So you can see there's multiple zones here. This is Kalimdor, or sorry, this is Eastern Kingdoms. You can see multiple zones here. It looks like where they're working on stuff. I think Dalaran is like right here, so they're working on stuff there. Or Strathome, obviously. There's Silvermoon up here. And then you see a bunch of changes down at the lower part of the Eastern Kingdoms as well. So lots of changes happening. We'll see what happens, what all this means. Probably new quests, new stuff going on in these zones. And
But the locations for
obviously, if it's a Classic Plus, you're going to have new shit to do in the old world.
them seemed very suspicious, as they seemed like new potential areas which will be added for Classic Plus. Now, these files were added to retail, but the clients do share a lot of data, and there was nothing in retail to indicate that this was actually for the modern game. The locations are also exclusively in vanilla zones in the Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor, so pretty interesting there. It is something to do with water as well, so maybe they were revamping the water and it just triggered all of these map changes. I don't really know. There's nothing we can really look at, but it is very interesting that these specific highlighted areas do seem to be kind of unused areas from Classic World of Warcraft that could be reused in a new Classic Plus version. But I would take this one specifically with
Silvermoon's up north.
Quite a large grain of salt. It's a little bit strange. Now, finishing out kind of my thoughts here, I'm pretty excited to find out what 1.60 is at BlizzCon 2026. I will be there in Anaheim, in the hall, ready to experience it with everybody else. I know nothing. I'm very excited to find out
it's going to be
what
a huge
on earth they've been working on for all this time. I loved Season of Discovery, and if it's more of that, but going a little bit harder and a bit more evergreen, then sign me up. I'm ready. I'm ready to make this my forever home for sure. Because with the amount of encrypted builds they've had, it definitely seems like they're doing a ton of work on this, so hopefully it is going to be exactly what people are looking for. I know Classic Plus is different for everybody. I know what I want, but certainly it's not going to be the same for everybody else. So let me know your thoughts on this type of video where we're just sort of talking about various things. I do have another Classic Plus video planned as well in a similar format, so let me know if this is something you like.
Cool.
A little bit more casual, a little bit more chatty, and if you did like it, guys, please do leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you do want to support me outside of YouTube, I am on Patreon and I'm on Twitter, MrGMYT, and I have a partner Discord channel as well. And also, if you like this kind of content, this is basically what my stream's like. So if you do want to check it out, I'm over on twitch.tv.
Yes, we've rated him many times.
I'm streaming World of Warcraft basically every weekday. So if you do want to check me out, I'm over on twitch.tv/MrGM. And with that, guys, I'll see you next time.
I mean, yeah, Conicia says inevitably somebody will be pissed no matter what. This is very true. I mean, they're not going to make everybody happy with whatever changes they decide to make to Classic to create Classic Plus. But I think the majority of players are going to be very happy and excited about this. It's going to be a massive announcement. I still think they're even going to have a playable version of it on the floor at BlizzCon. We'll see if that actually comes to fruition. But it's going to be huge. Whether you're a retail player or not, it's going to be huge not only for World of Warcraft, it's going to be huge for gaming in general. This is going to be a massive news when this comes out. And we'll see how good it actually turns out to be and whether or not the classic Andes, who really are just nostalgia players for the nostalgic chasers for the most part, are actually happy with what Blizzard ends up creating here. Overall, though, interesting stuff and nice video from Mr. GM.